When the avoidant pulls away from sex and intimacy, you ever wonder why just when things start getting close, they pull away, why they shut down, build walls, and create distance? It's like clockwork. You start feeling that connection and suddenly they vanish emotionally. It's frustrating, confusing, and sometimes it feels personal. But let me tell you something, it's not a conscious attack on intimacy. It's a defense mechanism, a survival instinct, and if we don't understand it, we suffer. If we do understand it, we can transform it. Most people assume the avoidant is cold, uncaring, or uninvested. That's a lie. Avoidants have the same deep emotional needs as anyone else, but their nervous system is wired to equate intimacy with a loss of control. They pull away because closeness feels overwhelming. You've seen it happen. Deep connection, vulnerability, then boom, distance. It's not because they don't love you. It's because they were never taught to be safe in love. Understanding this pattern lets you stop reacting emotionally and start responding with clarity. You want passion? You want deep connection? Then understand this. Intimacy cannot exist without emotional safety. If an avoidant pulls away, chasing them only reinforces their fear. Instead, create a space where they feel they can come back without pressure. You can't heal someone's wounds by overcompensating. You can't love someone out of their avoidance. What you can do is create the conditions where healing becomes possible. But they have to walk that path themselves. Most relationships fall apart because one or both people are operating from fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of losing freedom. The key is moving from fear to empowerment. Ask yourself, are you responding out of love or reacting out of fear? That answer changes everything. You don't attract the love you want, you attract the love you believe you deserve. The greatest way to shift an avoidant dynamic is to stop focusing on fixing them and instead elevate yourself. When you grow, you raise the standard of what's possible in your relationship. If you're in a cycle of avoidance, you have two choices. Keep playing out the same pain over and over, or break the pattern. Growth isn't easy, but it's worth it. The quality of your relationships determines the quality of your life. And the moment you stop making fear-based decisions, everything changes. It starts with you. Most people assume that when someone pulls away from intimacy, it means they don't care. They think the avoidant is cold, uninterested, or even emotionally unavailable by choice, but that's not the truth. In reality, avoidance isn't about a lack of emotion. It's about too much emotion. It's not about indifference. It's about overwhelm. When an avoidant distances themselves from sex and intimacy, they're not rejecting you. They're trying to protect themselves from something they don't fully understand. From the outside, it looks confusing. One moment, there's passion, deep conversation, and connection. Then suddenly they start to pull back. Maybe they become distant, they stop initiating physical touch, or they seem emotionally closed off. And if you don't understand what's happening, it's easy to take it personally. You start questioning yourself. Did I do something wrong? Did I say too much? Was I too needy? The self-doubt kicks in, and before you know it, you're in a spiral of overthinking, reacting, and trying to fix something that isn't yours to fix. But let's take a step back and really look at what's going on inside the avoidant's mind. Most avoidants develop their attachment style early in life. As children, they might have had caregivers who were emotionally unavailable, dismissive, or inconsistent. They learned that expressing their needs led to rejection or discomfort. So they adapted, they became self-reliant, they convinced themselves that vulnerability was dangerous. Over time, this belief became part of their identity. By the time they reach adulthood, closeness feels like a threat, even when they crave connection deep down. When an avoidant experiences intimacy, whether emotional or physical, it can activate a flood of unconscious fears. Suddenly, they feel trapped. They worry that if they let someone in too deeply, they'll lose themselves. Their mind races with thoughts they don't even recognize consciously. What if I get hurt? What if I lose my independence? What if I'm not enough? What if they expect too much from me? And instead of expressing these fears, they shut down. They create space. They need time to regulate their emotions before they can re-engage. The worst thing you can do in this moment is chase them. When someone with an avoidant attachment style starts to retreat and you react with panic, demanding answers, pushing for reassurance, trying to pull them back in, you reinforce their fear. They see intimacy as something that consumes them, and the more you push, the more they feel the need to escape. It's not because they don't love you. It's because love itself feels like a battlefield, and they don't know how to stay in the fight without losing themselves. The irony is that avoidants want connection as much as anyone else. They desire deep, meaningful relationships, but their survival instinct kicks in when things get too close and they default to distance. It's not about rejecting their partner, it's about avoiding the pain they've associated with closeness. This is why patience and understanding are critical. If you react with anger or frustration or neediness, you confirm their belief that intimacy leads to conflict. But if you hold your ground, stay calm, and give them space, you create an environment where they can begin to feel safe. The key to navigating a relationship with an avoidant is recognizing that their retreat is not about you. It's an automatic response wired into their nervous system. It's not a lack of care, it's a coping mechanism. And while that doesn't mean you have to tolerate emotional distance indefinitely, it does mean that understanding the deeper layers of their behavior can free you from unnecessary pain. You don't have to take their withdrawal as proof that you're not enough. Instead, you can step back, breathe, and remind yourself their avoidance is about their fears, not your worth. And here's where transformation happens, because once you understand this, you can stop reacting. You can shift from frustration to clarity. You can choose to create a different pattern, one where intimacy isn't about fear, but about safety. And when that happens, real connection becomes possible. One of the most frustrating things about being with an avoidant is the push-pull cycle. It feels like just when things are going well, when the connection is deepening, the intimacy is growing, and you're finally getting closer, they suddenly pull back. It happens out of nowhere. Maybe they start acting distant, stop responding as quickly, or become emotionally unavailable. The warmth and passion that were there just days ago seem to disappear, and you're left wondering what went wrong. This is where most people start to panic. They assume they did something to cause the withdrawal. Maybe they said too much, asked for too much, or got too close too fast. The self-doubt kicks in, and they start replaying every conversation, trying to pinpoint the exact moment they might have pushed the avoidant away. This leads to overcompensating, sending more texts, asking if everything is okay, trying to pull the avoidant back in, but instead of bringing them closer, it pushes them further away. Why? Because this isn't a logical choice the avoidant is making. It's a deeply ingrained pattern. It's a cycle they've been playing out for years, often without realizing it. And if you don't recognize it for what it is, you get caught in it, reacting emotionally instead of responding with awareness. Avoidants experience closeness and intimacy differently than those with secure or anxious attachment styles. To someone with an avoidant attachment, emotional and physical closeness can feel overwhelming. In the beginning stages of a relationship, or even in a long-term relationship where intimacy is increasing, they may be fully engaged, enjoying the connection, but at a certain point, something shifts internally. Their nervous system registers the growing closeness as a potential threat. It's not something they consciously think about, it's something they feel. At this point, their instinct is to create distance. It's a protective mechanism designed to restore a sense of control. They might start pulling away emotionally, canceling plans, or simply becoming less affectionate. They may not even realize they're doing it, but their subconscious mind is working to prevent them from feeling too vulnerable. If their partner reacts with panic, demanding explanations, chasing, or expressing hurt feelings, suddenly they feel even more trapped, and their only option is to withdraw even further. The partner, now feeling rejected and abandoned, reacts even more strongly, trying harder to reconnect. And just like that, the push-pull cycle continues. What makes this cycle so painful is that both people feel misunderstood. The partner feels neglected and unwanted, while the avoidant feels pressured and overwhelmed. Neither person is intentionally hurting the other, but the misunderstanding keeps deepening. The more the partner tries to hold on, the more the avoidant feels the need to escape. The only way to break this cycle is to stop reacting emotionally and start responding with awareness. Instead of panicking when an avoidant pulls away, recognize that it's not personal. Their withdrawal is not a reflection of your worth or how much they care about you. It's a habitual response to intimacy. When you internalize this truth, you stop chasing. You stop taking their distance as a personal rejection. You start seeing it as a predictable pattern rather than an attack on your relationship. This shift in perspective changes everything. Instead of feeding into the cycle by reacting with fear, you create space for them to come back on their own. When you stop pushing, they feel less pressure. When they feel less pressure, they don't have to run. This is how you change the dynamic, not by forcing connection, but by understanding that connection for an avoidant takes time and safety. The more you recognize the push-pull cycle for what it is, the less power it has over you. You move from frustration to clarity. You start leading with confidence instead of fear. And when that happens, you create a relationship that isn't ruled by unconscious patterns, but by real, lasting connection. Intimacy is something most people crave. It's the glue that deepens relationships and brings two people closer together. But for an avoidant, intimacy can feel like a threat rather than a gift. They may desire connection, but the moment it starts to feel too close, their instinct is to retreat. This is where so many relationships run into problems. One partner seeks closeness while the avoidant partner pulls away, creating a cycle of frustration and misunderstanding. What many people fail to realize is that intimacy isn't the first step in a relationship with an avoidant. Safety is. Without emotional safety, intimacy will always feel like pressure to someone with an avoidant attachment style. They may initially engage in intimacy, but if they don't feel emotionally secure, that intimacy quickly turns into something overwhelming. It becomes something they have to manage rather than something they can fully embrace. They start to feel trapped, like they are losing themselves in the relationship, and the only way they know how to cope is to create distance. This is why chasing an avoidant when they pull away never works. When they retreat, the natural response from their partner is often to try harder, to reach out more, to seek reassurance, or to demand explanations for their behavior. But from the avoidance perspective, reinforces their fears. They feel like they're being pulled into something they aren't ready for, which makes them withdraw even more. The partner feels rejected, the avoidant feels suffocated, and the cycle continues. The key to breaking this pattern is understanding that intimacy cannot exist without safety. If an avoidant does not feel emotionally safe, they will never fully engage in intimacy, no matter how much they care about their partner. They need to feel that they can be close without losing their sense of independence. They need to feel that they can engage in intimacy without being consumed by it. So how do you create that safety? The first step is to stop chasing them when they pull away. Instead of reacting with fear or anxiety, give them space. Let them come back in their own time. This doesn't mean you tolerate emotional neglect or stay in an unhealthy situation, but it does mean understanding that avoidants need time to process their emotions. When you stop pushing, you allow them to re-engage on their own terms, which builds trust over time. Another critical aspect of creating safety is emotional consistency. Avoidants don't respond well to emotional highs and lows. If they feel that their partner is unpredictable or that love is conditional on their behavior, they will retreat even further. But when they experience consistency, when they see that their partner isn't reacting emotionally every time they pull away, it starts to challenge their beliefs about intimacy. They begin to associate the relationship with stability rather than pressure. And that stability makes it easier for them to stay close. It's also important to recognize that safety isn't just about how you treat them, it's about how you treat yourself. If you become anxious every time they create distance, they will pick up on that energy. They will feel the weight of your expectations, and that weight will push them further away. But when you cultivate your own sense of emotional security, you create an environment where they feel safe enough to return. Your calmness becomes a signal that intimacy doesn't have to be overwhelming, and that signal is what allows them to stay present in the relationship. In the end, intimacy is not something you can force. It's something that develops naturally when both partners feel safe. If an avoidant pulls away, it's not a sign that they don't care. It's a sign that they don't feel safe enough to stay close. When you shift your focus from demanding intimacy to creating safety, everything changes. The pressure disappears, the fear lessens, and real connection becomes possible. One of the biggest mistakes people make in relationships with avoidance is believing they can fix them. They think if they love them enough, if they show them what real intimacy looks like, if they are patient and understanding, the avoidant will finally let down their walls and embrace the relationship fully. This belief is not only exhausting, but it's also false. You cannot fix an avoidant. You cannot love them so much that they suddenly become secure overnight. Healing is a personal journey, and no amount of effort on your part can do the inner work for them. This is one of the hardest truths to accept when you care about someone deeply. You see their potential, you see glimpses of the connection that could be there if only they would stop running, stop pulling away, stop closing off. You tell yourself that if you just communicate more clearly, if you just create a perfectly safe environment, they will finally trust you enough to let their guard down. But what you don't realize is that the moment you take on the role of the fixer, you create an unhealthy dynamic, one where you are pushing responsibility for their own emotional growth. The need to fix someone often comes from a deeper place within yourself. Maybe you were taught that love means proving your worth. Maybe you learned in childhood that if you could just meet other people's needs, they would finally give you the love and attention you craved. If this resonates with you, then it's not just the avoidant that needs healing, it's you too. The truth is, if you are constantly trying to earn love by fixing someone, you are operating from a place of lack. You are believing, even unconsciously, that love must be worked for, that it isn't something you simply receive for being who you are. The more you try to fix an avoidant, the more they resist. Not because they don't care, but because healing doesn't work that way. Avoidants need to reach a place where they choose growth for themselves, not because someone else is pushing them. If they feel like you are trying to change them, they will interpret it as pressure, as another demand being placed on them, and their instinct will be to retreat even further. Instead of focusing on fixing them, shift your focus to yourself. Ask yourself, why am I so invested in trying to make this work? Am I afraid of letting go? Do I feel like I have to prove my worth by making this relationship successful? When you start asking yourself these hard questions, you begin to understand your own patterns. And with that understanding comes freedom. You no longer need to chase. You no longer need to overcompensate. You recognize that love is not about convincing someone to stay. It's about mutual growth and reciprocity. This doesn't mean you abandon the avoidant or stop caring about them. It means you stop carrying the weight of the relationship alone. It means you hold them accountable for their own healing instead of trying to do the work for them. If they pull away, you don't beg for closeness. If they struggle with intimacy, you don't try to force them into being vulnerable. Instead, you stand firm in your own self-worth. You communicate your needs clearly, and if they are unable or unwilling to meet them, you respect yourself enough to make choices that align with your emotional well-being. When you stop playing the fixer, something powerful happens. The avoidance starts to feel the space you create. They realize they can't rely on you to do the emotional work for them anymore. And in that space, they are faced with a choice. They can either continue avoiding intimacy and risk losing someone who truly cares, or they can begin the process of growth on their own terms. This is the only way real change happens, not through force, not through endless patience, but through the natural consequences of their actions. You are not responsible for healing someone else's wounds. You are only responsible for your own. When you truly embrace that, you shift from chasing love to attracting it. And that shift changes everything. Fear is one of the biggest driving forces in relationships, especially in relationships where one person has an avoidant attachment style. It shows up in different ways, but at its core, it all comes down to the same thing: fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of losing independence, fear of being hurt. When fear is in control, it dictates how people behave, how they respond to intimacy, and ultimately how their relationships unfold. If you want to change the dynamic with an avoidant, the key is shifting out of fear and into empowerment. Avoidants are often operating from a place of fear without even realizing it. They associate closeness with loss of control. They've been conditioned to believe that if they let someone in too deeply, they will be consumed by the relationship. Maybe they grew up in an environment where their emotional needs weren't met, or maybe they had experiences that taught them that love always comes with conditions. Whatever the reason, their instinct is to protect themselves by maintaining distance. But the irony is that this very behavior, this pulling away, this avoidance, is driven by fear, not by a lack of interest or care. Their partners, on the other hand, often experience a different type of fear. When an avoidant pulls away, their partner feels rejected. They worry that they aren't enough, that the avoidant doesn't love them, or that the relationship is doomed. This fear can lead to overcompensation, trying harder, chasing, seeking reassurance, but this reaction only reinforces the avoidant's fear. The more one person pursues, the more the other withdraws, creating a cycle where both people are operating from fear rather than love. The moment you recognize this pattern, you gain the power to break it. You stop playing the game of reaction and start making conscious choices. Instead of responding to distance with panic, you take a step back and ask yourself, am I acting from fear or from empowerment? This single question has the ability to shift everything, because when you're operating from fear, you're giving your power away. You're letting someone else's actions determine how you feel about yourself, and that never leads to a healthy dynamic. And empowerment looks completely different. Instead of chasing, you hold your ground. Instead of questioning your worth when an avoidant pulls away, you remind yourself that their behavior is about them, not about you. Instead of trying to fix the relationship, you focus on your own growth, your own healing, your own happiness. This shift doesn't just change how you feel, it changes how the avoidant responds to you. Avoidants don't trust intimacy, but they do respect strength. When they feel like they are being pursued, they instinctively pull away, but when they see someone who is secure in themselves, someone who's confident and not relying on them for validation, their perception of intimacy starts to change. They begin to associate closeness with stability rather than pressure. They see that love doesn't have to mean losing themselves. It can mean finding someone who stands strong beside them. This is why shifting from fear to empowerment isn't just important for the relationship as a whole. When you stop reacting out of fear, you create a safe space where real intimacy can grow. You show the avoidant that connection doesn't have to be suffocating, and at the same time, you protect yourself from falling into the trap of proving your worth. The truth is, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to earn love by working harder, by chasing, or by waiting for someone to change. When you step into empowerment, you realize that your value isn't dependent on someone else's ability to show up for you. You become the source of your own security, and that changes everything. Whether the avoidant chooses to grow or not, you are no longer held hostage by their fears. You move from seeking love to embodying it, and when you do that, you attract the kind of relationship that isn't built on fear, but on true emotional connection. When you're in a relationship with an avoidant, it's easy to feel like you're always waiting for them to open up, waiting for them to come back after pulling away, waiting for them to finally be ready for the level of intimacy you crave. But the hard truth is this: if you are always waiting for someone to change, you are putting your own life on hold. You are sacrificing your emotional well-being for the potential of what the relationship could be, rather than accepting it for what it is. It's natural to hope that an avoidant will eventually realize the depth of your connection and start showing up differently. After all, you've seen glimpses of their vulnerability. You've experienced moments where they let their guard down, and you know the love is there beneath the layers of fear and self-protection. But the reality is that change doesn't happen just because you want it to. Change happens when the avoidant decides on their own that they are ready to face their fears and do the work. And until that happens, all the waiting in the world won't make a difference. The longer you wait, the more you teach yourself that your needs don't matter. You start minimizing what you want in order to keep the peace. You start convincing yourself that if you're just patient enough, if you just love them the right way, they will eventually transform into the partner you need them to be. But what you don't realize is that this pattern, this waiting, this hoping, keeps you trapped in a cycle where your happiness is always in the hands of someone else. It keeps you in a place where you are settling for less than you deserve, all in the name of potential. The moment you recognize this, you have a choice to make. You can continue waiting, investing more time and energy into a relationship that may never evolve, or you can start living for yourself. You can choose to prioritize your emotional needs instead of constantly managing someone else's fears. You can decide that you are worthy of a relationship where love isn't a guessing game, where you don't have to analyze every interaction to figure out where you stand. This doesn't mean you have it to walk away immediately. It means you shift your focus from waiting for them to change to asking yourself what you need. Are you truly happy in this dynamic? Do you feel emotionally fulfilled? Are you constantly anxious about when the next withdrawal will happen? When you get honest with yourself, you might realize that you've been compromising too much, that you've been making excuses for their behavior instead of acknowledging how it's affecting you. And the truth is, love should feel secure. It should feel like a place where both people feel safe to show up fully. If you are constantly managing your partner's fears, walking on eggshells to avoid triggering their avoidance, or suppressing your own needs to keep the peace, then you are not in a relationship. You are in an emotional balancing act, and that is not sustainable. Happens when you stop waiting, when you stop putting your happiness on hold, you shift the dynamic completely, you take back your power, and when you do that, one of two things will happen. Either the avoidant will realize that you are no longer willing to accommodate their emotional distance, and they will step up, or they won't, and you will free yourself from a relationship that was never truly meeting your needs in the first place. Either way, you win, because you are no longer sacrificing yourself for someone else's inability to show up. You are no longer waiting for love, you are choosing it on your terms, and that choice is what leads to the kind of relationship you truly deserve. One of the most important things to understand about avoidance is that their withdrawal is not about you. It's about them. When they pull away, it's easy to assume that you did something wrong, that you weren't enough, or that you need to prove your worth to bring them back. But the reality is, their avoidance is a deeply ingrained pattern often formed in early childhood that makes intimacy feel unsafe. It's not that they don't want love. It's that love, as they've experienced it, has always come with strings attached. Their need for distance is their way of maintaining control, of protecting themselves from being hurt. The more you personalize their behavior, the more you will suffer. The moment you stop seeing their withdrawal as a reflection of your worth, you take back your power. Avoidants often struggle with emotional expression. It's not that they don't feel, it's that they don't always know how to process or communicate those feelings in a way that feels safe. When emotions become overwhelming, their instinct is to shut down rather than lean in. This can make their partners feel neglected, unseen, or even unimportant. But it's crucial to remember that their lack of verbal or physical affection isn't necessarily a sign that they don't care. It's a sign that they're operating from their own conditioning, from a place where vulnerability was never encouraged. This is why pressuring them to open up rarely works. Pushing for emotional expression before they feel safe will only reinforce their belief that intimacy is dangerous. The key is to create an environment where they can share at their own pace, without judgment, without force, and without the fear that their emotions will be used against them. Many people in relationships with avoidance make the mistake of trying to earn their love. They believe that if they are more understanding, more patient, or more available, the avoidant will eventually change. But love is not something that should have to be earned. The moment you start overcompensating for someone else's emotional unavailability, you are reinforcing a dynamic where your needs come second. A relationship should never feel like an emotional marathon where you are the only one running toward connection while the other person stands still. Healthy love is about reciprocity. It's about two people meeting in the middle, not one person doing all the emotional labor while the other resists closeness. Another critical realization is that an avoidance love language may look different from yours. Many avoidants express love through actions rather than words. They might not say, "I love you" often, but they may show love in more subtle ways, through problem solving, through small gestures, through their presence in moments when it really matters. This doesn't mean you should settle for a relationship that lacks emotional depth, but it does mean that understanding their way of loving can help you navigate the relationship more effectively. At the same time, if their form of love doesn't align with your emotional needs, you have every right to decide whether the relationship truly fulfills you. One of the most powerful things you can do in a relationship with an avoidant is to lead by example. Instead of trying to pull them toward intimacy, embody the kind of security you want in a relationship. Be consistent, be emotionally regulated, and show that closeness doesn't have to mean control. When they see that intimacy doesn't come with pressure or expectation, they may slowly begin to let their guard down. But again, this is not about changing them. It's about maintaining your own emotional integrity. The more you embody security, the less their avoidance will trigger you. You will stop seeing their distance as something you need to fix, and instead, you will see it for what it is, their work to do, not yours. Ultimately, the way forward is not about waiting for an avoidant to change. It's about deciding what you are willing to accept and what you are not. You don't have to settle for a relationship where you constantly feel like you're chasing love. You don't have to shrink your needs to accommodate someone else's fears. The right relationship is one where you feel wanted, valued, and emotionally safe without having to prove your worth or beg for closeness. When you stop focusing on what the avoidant is doing and start focusing on what you deserve, you step into a place of power. And in that place, love is no longer something you chase. It's something that naturally aligns with you. At the end of the day, relationships should not be built on chasing, waiting, or trying to fix someone who isn't ready to grow. If you find yourself constantly managing an avoidant's fears, questioning your worth, or putting your own needs aside in the hope that they will change, it's time to shift your focus back to yourself. True connection isn't about convincing someone to stay. It's about creating a relationship where both people feel safe, valued, and free to love without fear. When you stop acting out of fear and start embracing empowerment, everything changes. But whether the avoidant learns to open up or not, you are no longer trapped in their cycle. You are free to choose a love that feels secure, mutual, and fulfilling. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for investing in your growth. You deserve a love that doesn't leave you waiting. You deserve a love that shows up.